Hey guys, Ben Painting. Today we're back once again for another video, and this time we have returned back to Bristol for the first round of the second edition of Grid Series, which is going on. There's going to be 3 separate rounds, which I believe are about a month apart, and we're just going to jump straight into this. What you're watching now is the very start of qualifying, but we're going to skip on to our actual best flying lap that we did in the session. Now, this was split into a 10-minute practice session, a 15-minute qualifying session, and then a 25-minute race, which consists of no pit stops, just a straight run. And the first thing that I noticed straight away is how much grip there is at Bristol at the moment with the brand new rear tyres that they've put on the karts. I was not used to this. I was expecting it to be a lot more slidey compared to how it usually is, but it was absolutely grip central. I was really enjoying it, and if I'm honest, it was more accustomed to Cardiff when I used to go over there. So that's how it feels at Bristol at the moment, and I'm really excited to hop back down here over the winter for a couple of times to really get involved and try and win Grid Series for the middleweights once again, like we did earlier in the year. Now, we come across the line on our flying lap with a 38.399 second lap time, which was only enough to put us in 9th position, which is a little bit down the order, and there's going to be no fancy sort of transitions with this one. We're going to jump straight into the race. You can see we're starting in 9th position here on the grid. So we come off the line straight away. We have Andreas on the left hand side. We're trying to sort of try our luck around the outside, and know that the first lap's always a bit of chaos, loading galore. You can see everyone's heads are snapping back. We're in 9th. Alfie's around the outside behind us in 10th, and Arthur goes for a nice move up the inside of Andreas. We managed to get up into 8th momentarily, back down to 9th, and luckily on the up ramp we're able to squeeze our way down the inside and hold on to 8th position. You can see straight away we're going slightly more defensive round the first corner to sort of counteract any sort of revenge overtake from Andreas. So we managed to secure 8th position, and now we were just trying to tag onto the back of the guys that were bolting away in front of us and try and keep up with them if we could. Now, unfortunately, as you're going to see throughout the rest of the video, we just didn't quite have the pace on this evening. Now, I think this is due to the fact that I'm usually used to how little grip there is at Bristol. So the fact that there was grip once again, which is very similar to when I very first started at Bristol over a year and a half ago, it felt a lot similar to that, which is something I haven't been used to in a very long time. So it felt almost as if I was learning a new track off the bat straight away. Obviously it's the same track, and I also decided to swap my kart halfway through practice into qualifying, and I realised that the kart I used in qualifying had very low bottom end with the engine, so I decided to swap back into the kart that I began with in practice, as I was quicker in practice with that kart. I couldn't go any quicker in the new kart I was given, so I hopped back into that kart, and unfortunately due to that, I just think that the kart here at the beginning of the race was a little bit cold and it just needed to warm up and kick in. Now, this obviously meant that Andreas here goes straight down the inside, and he is able to capitalise on us driving quite slowly and not really up to our full potential, much like we usually do. And instead here you can see he's just deciding to motor away immediately. You can see me shaking my head thinking, what am I playing at? I'm just going backwards in this race so far. I haven't really done anything other than be back where I am starting. So I'm really trying to not let Andreas escape into the distance, but you can see I'm shaking my head again because just every corner he's just gaining a little bit more time on me, every single part of the corner. I'm looking over my shoulder. We got Alfie Richardson up behind us as well, quite closely. I knew that he would be looking to pounce on us as well. So at this point I was feeling a little bit nervous. I thought, well, I'm not really sure if it's the car, if it's me. Obviously we always like to blame the car, but after looking at the times at the end of the race, it definitely was down to me just driving a bit strange, a little bit off. And one thing I was noticing that I was doing when looking back at the footage now is I'm just braking a little bit too much into the corners. It's causing the revs to sort of drop a bit too much, and I'm not carrying as much momentum through the corners as I need to. So here you can see I'm really hitting the brake throttle, the brake pedal, sorry, not the brake throttle, and I'm trying to get the kart rotated much like I normally would at Bristol on the bottom hairpin, but there's just so much grip that you don't really need to do that. You can see here I'm just losing a lot of time to Andreas up ahead. He's sort of breaking away from us now, gaining a couple of tenths here and there through each of the corners, and it's just causing us to sort of lose out really. So now we're down in 9th. Andreas is obviously in the middleweight category. He is our main competitor at the moment, so we wanted to finish above him. Everyone else that was ahead of us was actually a junior or a lightweight, so this was really the battle that we were really needed to have with Andreas. Obviously you could see the other guys up ahead. In fact, I make a complete lie, Arthur Langley was also up ahead of us, and he was in the heavyweight category, so he was driving really well on the night as well, so he was keeping up with the guys up ahead, and myself and Andreas just seemed to be a little bit off the pace here at this one. I don't know if this is due to us being at Leicester, driving a little bit different recently and not being down as much to Bristol, but you can see there in the background while I'm waffling on that Alfie's been able to take a very nice move down the inside of us into the top hairpins, and he's actually able to sort of steal the position from us into 9th. So now we're down into 10th place, which is not somewhere that I'm used to being in at Teamsport Bristol when I come down here, so I was starting to panic a little bit. I didn't know if I was just driving completely atrociously, which obviously I was, and I was even getting pressured from the driver in 11th place. They were loading me a little bit through the Mickey Mouse sections, probably why I looked over my shoulder in a very slow and menacing manner, but we start to really get on the pace now at this point. I think the kart started to warm up. I think I started to understand where I was going wrong, and as we kick in more and more into the race, you will see that our fastest laps do start to come down more and more. We started out straight away at 38.644, so we're on the pace of not where we need to be, but we're starting to get on the pace and building up to where we need to be. Obviously we've been quite slow so far, so anything and however quick we can be is always going to be a bonus compared to how we were at the beginning of the race, where we're getting 39-second lap times, which is about 2 seconds off the pace of where we need to be usually. So again, you can see I'm trying to take nice tight lines through the double hairpin at the top section of the track, just trying to really minimize the track distance. Obviously from taking a wider line, you're only going to sort of extend the track and make yourself have to drive further, and it's going to cause slower times to be had. You can see again we're really starting to get our head down now at 38.399. We're getting closer to those 37-second lap times, which is where we need to be, and we're just sort of following Alfie up ahead of us to try and catch back up to Andreas. You can see I'm saying to Alfie, pointing to him, I'm not going to overtake you yet, just really push forward and see if we can catch up with Andreas, who was actually breaking away at quite a good rate at the beginning of the race there compared to how we were driving. But unfortunately all three of us here in this session just weren't really up to the pace of where we needed to be, and we would just had to get back involved and try and catch up to the other guys that were securing the top 7 positions so far. So again, you can see I'm trying to ensure that I'm not loading Alfie through the Mickey Mouse section, going a little bit wider just to carry my momentum through the corner, and still I was just hitting the brakes a little bit too much and not quite getting the kart pointed in the direction that I wanted to go, and this was just leading to me losing a little bit of time coming out of the sort of hairpin before the up ramp. And again, through the top right hand corner, I found that a lot of the other drivers, after speaking to them, said they were taking the corner flat out, and I just wasn't able to do that in the kart I was in. I was having to lift off. The back end just felt like it was a little bit squirrely through there, and I was just losing a little bit of time every lap in that section of the track. So being quite consistent now, low 38-second lap times of 38.318, and from sort of working with Alfie almost and not really trying to send a move on him and drive around in a little bit of a train, we've been able to catch up to the back of Andreas here. So you can see Andreas going quite wide here. We're also taking the same line just to try and preserve our momentum, but you can see like the sort of slowing down that I was talking about. I was having to lift off of the accelerator, and luckily in this video we haven't got the camera pointed down completely on the steering wheel and the pedals, so we have got a little bit more of a viewing sort of scene for you guys. Obviously after my last few videos I have had the camera pointed a little bit lower, which is completely my mistake, but unfortunately obviously as I have the camera on the top of my head, I can never really tell the perfect angle that I'm pointing at unless I get someone to come over and ask me or tell me about it, or unless I see the footage afterwards. So you can see Alfie's sent a very nice move down the inside of Andreas. I thought I capitalised on the move as well, sort of beating him to the apex there on the first hairpin at the top section. So we've been able to both move up past Andreas here into 8th and 9th, which I was really happy with. Obviously, as I've mentioned, I'm not really racing Alfie in terms of class, so he's in the lightweight category, and Andreas is really my main rival at the moment in the middleweight category. So we are able to get past him, and now I wanted to try and catch back up to Alfie and maybe even push forward if we were able to work together to catch up to the guys that were securing the top 7 positions, as I mentioned earlier in the race. So you can see again, we're trying to take a nice wide line. We are able to just sort of flow through the corners here Again, really trying to experiment with different braking pressures at this point. Obviously, earlier in the race, as I mentioned, I was just hitting the brakes a little bit too hard, and this was leading me to bog down. So instead, I was trying to almost chuck the car into the first hairpin, much like I do at Cardiff before you go up the ramp, and then hit the brake pedal, and it did seem to be helping, as we've now really caught up to the back of Alfie here, a 38.078, and as I mentioned, I wasn't looking to make a move on him just yet. I was looking to sort of push him along if I could, so we both would be able to try and bridge the gap that has sort of been made from our errors earlier in the race. So again, you can see we're trying to take as tight lines as we can. I kept looking over to the right hand side, not fully with my head but with my eyes as we're coming on the down ramp, just to see what sort of gap was being made and if we were bridging it as we come around the rest of the track. You can see again a 38.258 second lap time, a little bit slower compared to our last lap. However, I thought at this point that Alfie was beginning to slow us down a little bit. I felt like I was a little bit quicker. I was lifting off through some of the corners, braking a little bit earlier, just to ensure that I wasn't bumping him around as we were driving behind him, because you never want to have someone behind you that's just loading you constantly through the corners. You can see how much more pace I was carrying through the first hairpin there. Unfortunately, I had to sort of lift off to ensure that I didn't bump him too much, but any bump on that sort of section does give you a little bit of a momentum boost. So especially coming out of the second hairpin, which did happen with us later on. Alfie gave me a little bit of a bump later in the race coming out of the second hairpin, and I did put my thumb up to him to say, look, just keep doing that and we will be able to sort of push forward and catch the other guys up. Now you can see again the way that Alfie is driving in this section of the track. He's driving a little bit defensively, so on the bottom hairpin he's sort of driving to the right hand side, moving back to the left and then back to the right. Now I was keeping this in the back of my mind as we were driving around, and I thought that I was going to set up a move where if he was going to do that, I would be able to leech my way into the inside line as he's moving back to the left and take the position off of him. So again, you can see we're coming across the line, 38.266. We're being very consistent now, but obviously that's due to us just being stuck up behind Alfie now. So at this point in the race, I decided that I wanted to try and get ahead. You can see he sort of moved his way to the left. As the momentum of his cart's moved over to the left hand side, we've lunged our way into the gap on the right hand side and beaten him to the apex, making up the position into 8th place. Now unfortunately, I do have to just skip to almost the end of the race here, because nothing really happened after that sort of battle with Alfie, and the lap you're watching now is in fact my fastest lap of the race. So our fastest lap so far is a 37.936, so we were back on the pace now. You can see we're catching up to some of the guys up ahead, as we had some very good consistency throughout the race. However, we just didn't quite have enough to catch up to anyone else that was up ahead, and there was a red flag at one point where Alfie's car actually broke down behind me, but other than that, me chatting to him once he got brought back round, nothing really happened. So you can see we're coming around the last corner now, trying to sort of widen out the last corner there, and we come across the line with a 37.749, which was very good time compared to some of the other drivers, and it was pretty much the same as some of the drivers up ahead of me. However, it just wasn't very consistent enough, and therefore we just sort of stayed in 8th position for the rest of the race. Now you can see again, we're sliding through the last corner here. We're coming into the last couple of laps here, I believe, at the end of the session. So we're coming around the Mickey Mouse section now, and we can see that Arthur here sort of pulls over to the right hand side and almost lets us through here. So we're up into 7th, which I'll be honest, I was a little bit confused about, but after talking to him after, he was like, well, there was no one else in the heavyweight category that was really racing against me, so I didn't see the problem with letting you pass. Now I appreciate that a lot, but I'm still really confused because I wasn't really racing anyone else up ahead of me that was in the middleweight category. So it's obviously more points for us in the middleweight sort of championship that we are doing, but it really didn't aid either of us really. So I was a bit confused why he let us pass, but I do appreciate it nonetheless, Arthur, so thank you very much. So we're coming into the last lap here, the last flying lap, and we have caught up to some of the other guys up ahead. Obviously we've got Robbie Petchy and Dylan Evans up ahead of us in 6th and 5th. We obviously got Arthur on our tail now behind us in 8th, and we've sort of slotted into the gap. Unfortunately on the last lap there was in fact a yellow flag. You can see Ruben there on the inside. He somehow managed to beach himself on the apex of the first corner, and you can see as we come down the bottom of the ramp here and into the last corner, we do come across to the checkered flag. So this video is a bit shorter, it's short but sweet. but this does in fact bring us to the end of the video. Now I do pull over to the side here and ask Arthur why he let us past, but he said not to worry, and obviously we beat Andreas in our category, so we did in fact finish in first place for the middleweights on this event, which is a great start to the championship, and I'm really happy with it. But this does in fact bring us to the end of the video, guys, so I hope you guys have enjoyed it. If you have, can you please leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because we have a lot of exciting things coming very soon, a lot of different things which I think you're all going to be very excited about. But in the meantime, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.